All right, welcome everybody. We have a good friend of mine, new friend of mine, Yvan Gauthier. He is a writer, director, producer. He's worked on several projects for several decades. He is a French filmmaker who spent a good bit of time in LA and is now working on his own independent projects. And we're going to be talking about the history of film, his influences, what he likes, what he doesn't like, how he got to where he is. And Yvan, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. And first thing I want to say is I know I have a pretty thick French accent, and I can't get rid of it. So if there are moments where if you don't understand stuff that don't hesitate to tell me. I don't mind repeating. I'm used to I'm used to it.
No, I have a good friend who's on my Discord, and he's also sounds just like you, by the way. So
Oh yeah.
I'm used to the accent, so I don't think it'll be a problem. But all right, Yvonne. So let's talk about first of all, what got you interested in film? What were some of the first films that really piqued your interest to make you say, "Hey, I want to do that. That's going to be my life goal is to make films." Were there books? Was it specific directors? Let's talk about influences.
Um, yeah, I mean, it really felt like it started when I was a teenager, and I started to watch a lot of movies, like mostly commercial movies. But my parents at the time, I was living in a small town in the east of France, not far from Germany, and then my parents were running like a cine club, and they were playing other movies, not only like the Disney or the super mainstream stuff. And then I was open pretty early to like different kind of movies, not only big American movies, but French movies, art house stuff from different countries. And then I really remember enjoying the experience so much that it was like almost a revelation. Like, okay, that's how what movies can make you feel was unique to me. And I thought, yeah, that's awesome. At the time I wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do, because being born and raised in the countryside, almost in a very small town, it's not really like the careers that people are going to pursue. And so, but I was lucky that my parents said, okay, if that's what you would like to do, maybe let's explore that. And then that's how it started. And then when I was like, I don't know, 15, 16, it's like I was so much into that. That's what I wanted to do. And then I started to play with Super 8 cameras at the time and see what could be done.
Did you go to film school or did you just do it all on your own?
So I started because we don't come from money. So then I still moved to Paris to go to, because I mean the ways of to get in the system in France. And I don't want to get into politics too early, but
That's fine.
basically, I mean, we had no idea of where to start, So we looked into how to get into the industry, and then there were mostly two ways in France to get there, which was the science, the at the time it was called the LIDEC. It was like the big film school that was very, very ultra selective for the happy few part of the families and all of that. Or there was the scientific side of it, more to become a technician. And so I tried to pass the test to go there, because the other one, it was clear that I wouldn't ever be picked, because I at the time I had no idea, but I clearly didn't fit the profile that they were looking for in these big schools. So the science part of filmmaking, I was interested in. I mean, I've really felt like I wanted to direct and do everything, but I said, okay, if I tried to get into these other more technical driven schools, and I kind of failed. So I tried to go to like universities and to learn more math and physics and stuff. But I tried, but that wasn't what I wanted to achieve.
When
Like,
you speak of the profile that they wanted, what exactly How would you characterize that?
Well, I mean, um, funny enough, through like some different relationships, once I was selected to be part of a trip to the USA, actually back in '89, to go visit some film school with a group of film students that were all part of this big school, like the FEMIS, I think it was at the time. They changed the name from EDEC to FEMIS, and I ended up through like a relationship. It's a long story, but I'll make it short. And I ended up going to a trip to the USA with a group of these guys, these people from this school. So I was able to actually meet the people from this school. And then I realized, later on that, a lot of them were part of family who were already in the business, or the LGBT.
So yeah, more of a political alignment that was necessary to be
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I could realize right away that I wasn't in on the same page at all with this group of people, and I was kind of an outcast within that group, because I was the only one, or maybe we were two or three that were not part of that school within that group, and I was completely ostracized, put on the side, because at the time I loved, like I still loved like commercial movies, and Luc Besson was big in France at the time. And I was, like he did like the Last Battle, like his first movie, and then he did Subway, which was like, oh, I loved Subway. And then for them, it was like garbage, like they were anti Luc Besson. They were all about super art house filmmaking. It was super leftist, but I didn't have the words to understand that at the time. I was like not even 20, so. But that trip was interesting, to come to the US for the first time for me, and then to see, we visited like, I think it was USC and all of that. That was interesting. But also, it was my first encounter with people from the industry, and that were design. And most of these people, they actually that were doing that group, they're all like very established French directors now. It's funny because I know them, but
Well,
now
Luc Besson is an interesting character with, the films that he started with, and then I think in the US, most people just know firstly of La Femme Nikita, and then you
yeah.
have the more Hollywood commercial stuff that he did throughout the 90s and the 2000s. And so was that kind of a model of what you were thinking? Okay, I want to break into the Hollywood domain, and
Totally.
then go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, Luc Besson. I mean, first I was a huge fan of big American movies. I mean, Steven Spielberg, of course, but Sergio Leone in Italy. That was a huge inspiration to me. Uh, I come from Italy as well. My grandfather was Italian, so I always felt some connection with Sergio Leone. Uh, and like the European version of American filmmaking in some way, so that was a big inspiration. So, but yeah, I was very much into commercial movies, but commercial with a twist, like interesting commercial movies, not just like the big stupid stuff. And so where were we at?
Yeah, I mean, I,
So
I understand that because I think most of the films that I've focused on were a lot of the commercial films that when I wrote the essays and whatnot that I found to be to some degree interesting with different elements, even if the films were not that great. There's always usually some interesting elements at least. But it's very different in the U.S. than it is, I think, probably from what you're used to because when we were talking, you said why do people like some of these action films and these action heroes? I don't understand. And in the U.S., it's more so about the experience, the elements that would probably be looked down upon in the art house sphere. It's not very sophisticated. It's not really seen as art. It's more of a baser sort of experience. I think for a lot of U.S. film goers because we just don't have that depth and sophistication of understanding the arts that probably a lot of people in Europe are probably still taught that to some degree, although now it's all probably just totally leftist. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It just doesn't translate
Yeah,
into, people
yeah,
don't think of it
yeah.
as art, they think of it as like a commercial almost.
Yeah, I would say, and it's funny with my wife, we laugh about that, but we say that culture is part of the of culture in France, and pretty much everywhere. You have like film festivals everywhere. You have lots of galleries. I mean, you can really uh, discover a lot of things. When in America, I mean, you have like big cities with a lot of that, but outside of that, you don't have too much, and it's not really part of the culture. I mean, just the American culture is
Right.
part of the culture, but the outside culture is not really part. When in France, it's such a, I mean, in Europe in general, I guess you have more of a cultural thing that's going on, like that's part of the people. But that's a big difference, I would say. But after that, it's good and it's bad. You have the good side and the bad side. Because then people start to lose their culture, if I may say that, because they're so within a cultural thing that at the end, is like, who are they? And then as a you know as a French person, at the end of the day, you end up with a President Macron who says French culture doesn't exist, and he actually said that, which is
Yeah, it's
completely
crazy.
insane.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
completely insane.
I mean, he's just a
So,
full on, counter initiation inversion
oh yeah.
revolution, Bolshevik revolutionary with that character. I mean, it's so extreme. Okay, so you end up when did you end up in the US and in the LA scene, and what was your initial experience there?
I mean, the first, I wanted to make movies. I moved to Paris, and then in Paris, I studied like a small French film school just for 1 year, just to learn the basis. It was very inexpensive private school. That's all we could afford. And then after that, I created a production company in France, and I became like very proactive, producing lots of different kind of content, mostly short films at the time. And this production company, I worked with lots of different directors. I was directing a lot of them, but I was also producing for other directors. I always liked that part of filmmaking as well. And I was able to produce also lots of music videos. I connected with independent rock bands, and we did a lot of music videos for bands that are pretty big now in France, actually. Alternative rock bands, really cool bands, and I worked with them closely for a while. And then until I was able to put together my first feature film that you discovered, Les Aliénés, and
Yeah,
that's
that was really interesting, and I know this might be a really dumb question for you, but for the sake of this audience, a lot of people who won't necessarily know a lot of this stuff because we've had a lot of growth in the last year on the YouTube channel, so we got a lot of people that will be new to some of these things. Could you describe the difference between the role of a director in the film versus the role of, say, in Les Aliens? You were the producer, so what exactly was the distinction there that you were mainly involved in?
No, Les Aliénés, I was the producer, but I also directed the movie. I
Oh, okay.
didn't, yeah, I directed that one. That was technically my first feature film as a director. I
I
did,
apologize. I watched it, but then
yeah, no,
the IMDb just lists you as a producer, but maybe it's a producer and director. I was just looking
yeah,
under producer.
IMDb, they keep on changing the presentation, and now you don't really know what you're looking at. But yeah, no, I because I'm probably still at producer first, then as director. So then probably that's why, I don't know. But yeah, that's my first feature film as a director, producer, and many more many more jobs, because it was like a super low budget. We still shot in 35 millimeter because at the time, that's all. I mean, that's what was available to make movies, and that was so the movie looked. I think the movie looks pretty good. That was shot Yeah, it was really hard to make that movie. I did not enjoy the process.
Well,
It was really
it turned out really well. I thought that was a it was a really interesting film. It didn't go in the direction that I expected. I like the we're sort of getting into the psyche of this garbage man, this sort of alienated outcast character, and then I won't spoil it, but perhaps he's dissociating, perhaps there's these repressed his angst against society and whatnot. But I mean, w- again, so what exactly is the difference between, because you have a lot of producing credits and then you have directing credits. Could you, just for the sake of my audience who might be new to
yeah.
it, explain the difference between when you're a director versus a producer?
Uh, and also the meaning of producer and director is also a little different in France and in the US. That's what I learned the hard way actually when I first moved to the US. That's another story. We may touch that later. But basically, in France, the director is kind of the captain of the ship. He's the one who's making all the decisions, and he's making his movie. When in America, the director, most of the time, he doesn't really make his movie, he makes the producer's movies. So in France, the director is by law, actually, he's you cannot take away his director's cut, for example, in France. When in America, the director's cut is, I mean, it's very rare that the director's cut is released. Just big directors, they can afford to.
Is it, yeah, this is when we hear about somebody having final cut, right? Like
Yeah, the final cut. Yeah,
Tarantino gets final cut, right?
exactly. Final cut. That's customary for every director in France. So by law, so which is great, and actually great and not great, because the director could be his own worst enemy at some point, and it's good that he has a good relationship with a producer who can, because in France, if a producer wants to fire a director because he cannot fire the director. So if the director becomes nuts and then he wants to do this or that, then you're stuck with whatever the director will give you. So that's a problem. But at the same time, in the US, the opposite. Like the director can have his movie taken away from him, and then that happened to me as well. So I know that I learned that. So but the director, basically, on set, it's a very different configuration, because the director on set is the guy who's there, calling all the shots, theoretically, and he's the one who decides the way he wants to shoot stuff. He's the one who picks all the technicians he wants to work with. He's the one he makes the movie the way he wants it to be. He picks the music. He does everything. The producer is mostly the guy who's putting together. That's for France. In France, the producer is managing to put the money together so the movie can happen. And in France, it's usually not his money. He works with I mean, producers don't put their own money in the movies most of the time. Which either in the US or in France. In France, it never happens actually, but because you have a whole system for the TV. The thing is, in France, the television stations are actually financing the movies. So that's why even though they're movies, you always feel like there's a TV movie element to a lot of French films, unless they're art house, but otherwise, if they're kind of commercial, because they're always designed for
Yeah,
TV first.
right. Right. So I guess there's a pro and a con to the relationship to the state, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Do they,
But
since the state tends to be kind of, left socialist, obviously, like, do they tend to also step into the films, and do they censor the art? Or are they pretty good being offhands on the art?
well, the biggest issue is that there's self-censorship, So for the directors, they know that if they want to make a movie happen, they have to talk. They have to turn into a woke world, and start writing in that realm. Otherwise these movies don't get made. The only movies that are not work that get made, then they are made outside the system, because in the system, you need to fit into
Exactly.
the rules. So that's the big downside actually of the French system. All the movies, they're all like kind of, but it's like a Hollywood. It's like a big propaganda machine at some point. So the system found a way to impose the way they want the movies to be, and that's the same in the US that it is in France, from with different tools, but the result is the same.
So you produce a bunch of and direct French films, and then you end up in Los Angeles, and then is it I Am Wrath that's the first sort of Hollywood production that you get involved in?
No, when I first moved to the US was in 2005. I got picked up to do a movie that went very wrong. So it's a pretty long story. So I don't necessarily want to get too much into it. And also it's a film I'd rather people not see anyway. So,
Okay.
so which I mean, my name is technically not in the credits, because I actually signed a movie. That name, Alan Smithy.
Yeah, yeah, the pseudonym that everybody uses.
Yeah, the pseudonym. So I actually signed my first movie in the US with the name Alan Smithy, and
Uh,
so that was a
okay.
disaster. But
Was that Showgirls?
no, I
I'm
wish
just
it.
joking.
I wish it was Showgirl. But so and then after that movie, I was supposed to do another movie. Actually, did LA I Hate You before I Am Wrath got made.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So and I shot another piece of a movie actually that helped that led to LA I Hate You. So because I moved in 2005, 2006 in the US, and then I started shooting that other movie that was called An American Hero. I shot pieces of it, and I have a few good scenes. And that was a really, really unique concept. I was able to gather a little money from friends to make this. And then I was thinking, oh, it's gonna look super cool when people are gonna see that. They're gonna pay for the rest of the movie. But then that did not happen like that. They say, oh yeah, we'll pay, but not for that movie. We'll pay for another one. And that's how LA I Hate You got made.
So that was the first sort of that was your baby, right? You came to LA, you finally got that made, and,
Yeah,
we got to see that. We You premiered that when we were with you in, Mississippi at your film festival there, when you premiered your most recent film, Vampire
yeah,
Project. And, that was really, it was a wild acid trip. I thought that was a really fascinating way to kinda tie in these different people's timelines into this sort of culminating, sort of, unexplainable phenomena, this sort of the mysterious that invades this realm out of nowhere. And it's like you think that initially that's these 4 people sort of moral dilemmas that they're caught up in, and then it kind of goes off into perhaps the demonic, perhaps something else. I won't give away too much because people might want to
yeah.
go see it. But talk. Let's talk about some of the influences on LA I Hate You, because did you was this partly spawned out of your immediate dislike for Hollywood and the industry there, or I mean, just
Yeah,
based
I
on the
mean,
title?
so what happened is, I was supposed to make another movie. I mean, it's interesting in Hollywood. A lot of movies get made because another movie fell apart. So then that movie gets made. And so what happened is I worked for a little while with a producer on a project that was a really, really cool script. I didn't write that script. It was called Motel at the time. That turned into an actual movie later on, a big movie with Robert De Niro. But I was supposed to direct that movie. It was written by James Russo, and that movie uh, ended up falling apart. It was a billionaire who wanted to finance that movie, And then he wanted to have Jeremy Renner to be the lead, and then he was ready to pay for Jeremy Renner, and that's the year where Jeremy Renner was nominated for an Oscar. So that was probably like 2009, I think. And we said it's not gonna happen. Jeremy Renner is he's nominated for an Oscar. He's not gonna do a little movie, he's gonna be on big stuff. And so the billionaire guy decided to just drop that project. But then the producer, who was friends with the billionaire, said, "Hey, maybe we can sell him to do a small movie. Like he gives us like a few $1,000, then we'll figure something out." And then that's how I had to pitch him something like almost instantly. I remember we were having a drink, a bit depressed that the other movie was not gonna go, and then I pitched him the concept of LA I Hate You just a bit out of nowhere. And funny enough, it says at the beginning that it's based on true events, and it's actually real. That most of the it's a 3-story concept, and these 3 stories are kind of based on real stuff. And so and it's actually based on people we knew. This producer and we knew this couple, and his girlfriend was handicapped, and then a friend of his say, "Hey, you should get rid of your girlfriend because she's gonna be a nightmare to deal with for the rest of your life." And that was I thought, yeah, that's a funny story. We should turn that into a movie. And then I got the idea of the guy who wants to cheat on his wife, and then things go wrong. And then the third story is also stories we heard in Hollywood, like, hey, and it's funny because it ties to a lot of what's happening in LA I Hate You. Is kind of reminiscent of the Epstein uh, power
I was going to
city.
say, yeah, you've got
Where
this sequence where it's tying into these organized crime networks, and there's eyes wide
yeah.
shut type parties going on. So yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say.
And we already had that in there, and I had no, I mean, it was like in 2009 that we wrote that script. So, and it's funny that there was already like the whole structure of Hollywood, that was in the movie as well. So, and then we got the idea of these 3 stories, and then the producer wanted me to work with this other guy who's actually playing the role in his own role, pretty much, of the girl, with a girl that's handicapped. And we started to write that together. I gave him like some notes. He started to write, and then I wasn't super happy. So at the end, I ended up like rewriting pretty much everything with him, and then we made the movie for almost no money.
Did it turn out basically fully the way you envisioned it? Was there things that you felt like didn't come together, or is it pretty much the way you wanted it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I never really see things exactly like that, because I know that the final version of the movie is final when it's done. So I know there are some directors like Hitchcock. They say, "Oh yeah, the whole movie is in my head, and then you just have to shoot it and put it together, but it's already made in my head." No, I don't really work like that. I like to get inspired by the people I meet, and see how things are gonna turn. I don't have like preconceived, because especially when you work on a low budget, what's the point of imagining a movie that you will not be able to make anyway? So that's why I work with what I have. And in that movie, I mean, I had LA, I lived there, I knew tons of people, we had access to lots of locations. And so that's the beauty of being in LA, is that you have all these locations that are easy on a low budget. And it was at the beginning of these new cameras that were out, like the DSLR cameras. I think we were probably the first people to shoot a movie with the Canon 7D at the time. And
Yeah,
so that was
that's yeah.
the freedom. We shot that movie with 2 of these 7Ds, or one. I think we just had one most of the time, I think.
And
And
you managed to get Malcolm McDowell in there as well, who plays an interesting villainous role.
yeah, no, we got an amazing cast at the end. I'm very, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, I'm very pleased with the movie for sure. As I mentioned to you, I think considering the budget, considering the way it was conceived, everything was written very, very quickly because it was kind of a challenge. Hey, we need to get that movie done quickly if we want it to happen. And so it was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the whole process, shooting everywhere and the freedom of these small cameras. And we were able to get like a special permit to shoot like with a DSLR, because at the time people were not used to seeing people shooting an actual movie. So you could have like it's like a photo shoot pretty much. So we were like very little equipment, and the actors had fun. And I think the movie turned out pretty well considering, you know, the how it started. I'm very pleased with the movie because it looks like me in some way, you know, like it's like you know, when I talk about my movies, I know they are not necessarily great, but at least they are unique. You know, it's not like a copy of thousands of other films that people have seen way better, you know, 500 times
No,
before. At least,
they're definitely unique. I mean, you know, the aliens was interesting. It's not about aliens for those that are curious.
yeah.
And then you know, I hate LA, Hate You was very unique. Vampire Project very unique. Um, what were some of the influences specifically when you made LA, I Hate You?
I don't really think of that really when I make a movie. I just don't. I mean, it was probably more visible when I did Les Aliénés, The Outcasts, the American title. When I did Les Aliénés, I mean, there was like clearly influences from the time. You know, the movie was shot in the late '90s, so it was a post. I would say it's a post Seven movie. So, you know, everybody was trying to do like his own version of Seven in some way, because that was like a movie that was like a landmark. And so I guess, and I was hanging out with a lot of other French directors that were also all like huge fans of
David Fincher.
Seven, of Fincher,
Hmm.
and it was very, it was a bit of a group thing. So that's why the movie is a bit part of a group thing, like putting rock music in the movie. We have a rock band. I don't know. I was kind of part of a group of people, and then it feels like this movie is not. It's kind of who I was at the time, I guess. You know, but LA I Hate You was is really more, even though it's also an old movie now. It was shot in 2010 or 29, 2010. But it feels like it's still me, you know. I still see myself in that movie. When I see Outcast, first of all, I haven't seen it in a long time. And, but it felt like I wanted probably too much to be part of something that wasn't necessarily me. When LA I Hate You, I just like emancipated. I thought, okay, I don't really, I'm not trying to do anything else than other people would do. I just do my own thing. But of course, I mean, I love lots of directors, and I'm sure you can see some David Lynch elements to it. Some I actually borrowed a couple of things from Gaspar Noé. That, you know, I like. I used to know him a long time ago, and especially I think his first movie is a masterpiece. I Stand Alone, and this guy I think is very talented, and that was someone that you know, I borrowed a couple of tricks, I would say, that I use in LA I Hate You. So, but not real like influence. I'm trying to imitate these guys. You know, it's I did my own thing, and also very importantly, I'm an editor, so I cut a lot of movies for other directors. And so, you know, when you cut the movie, that's where you really shape it. And then that's when a lot of the creativity comes from the editing, I think. So like
Yeah.
David Lynch probably works on his own movies. I would assume. I don't know if he works with other editors, but I know he does the sound design of his own. I mean, he
Yeah,
used to,
the sound
not
for sure. Yeah.
here anymore, but the sound, and I've done that as well. I Hate You. I did pretty much everything like post production. In terms of post production, that's the first movie where I actually did like 100% of the post production myself, pretty much.
So then, how was that one received at the time? Did it get play sort of locally around LA? Was it an art house film or what? How was the reception of that?
It was the thing is, the producer I was working with was mostly evolving within a group of producers who are mostly involved in B movies. I would say B action stuff. And that's kind of the group I kind of connected with in LA as well. So that means when you're part of that group, you're gonna have to work with the people connected to that group, means the sales companies, distribution, etc. So which means that the movie, and we had a lot of we had a bit of a fallout at the time with the producer. And the producer is actually playing one of the lead roles of the movie. He's playing the lead guy of the first story, the guy who goes to cheat on his wife.
Right.
And so that guy, we had a bit of a fallout after the movie because he was the only producer of the movie. I mean, financed by that billionaire, but he was like the one in charge, really, and he was able to call all the shots. And then at some point, we were actually on the short list to be in Slamdance, I think. But then they realized I had made another movie before, so then it couldn't be in the selection anymore. I mean,
You mean you had another film at Sundance? Is that what you're saying?
no, because because Slamdance,
I'm
which
sorry.
is
I'm
kind
sorry. I
of,
thought you said Sundance. Slam Dance.
you
Okay.
know, Slamdance, which is an offshoot of Sundance that used to take place at the same location, and that's still a real festival. And they wanted to play LA I Hate You, but they only play first feature films for directors. I mean, to summarize, because they're more complicated, but basically they wanted to play the movie, but then at the end of the day, they could not play it. So that would have helped a lot. Same thing with Les Aliénés. Les Aliénés was in the short film in one of the competitions in Cannes. It was in the short list in one of the competitions in Cannes, but at the Critics Week, but it was not so. It's almost like I'm second, but so I didn't get to the bigger festivals. And then when you don't get to the bigger festivals, it's kind of it's painful, because after that, the movies, the value of the movie and the way people regard the movies, then they're worth pretty much nothing. That's the hardcore reality of film festivals. Basically, if you're not in one of the major festivals, then it's kind of pointless. You can have all of the awards you want in all the festivals. If you're not in one of the happy few festivals that are extremely political, then your movie is worth nothing, pretty much.
So after this,
Which is also true for most of the movies that are in Sundance, by the way, just to be fair. Like most of the movies that are in Sundance, they will never be distributed. They will never be seen anywhere, or they'll do other festival ones, but these movies will make no money. And that's the harsh reality of independent filmmaking. Most of the films that get made don't make any money at all. That's just the reality of filmmaking. So it's not a business where
yeah.
you make money, actually.
So after this, you is this when you begin to work on some more of the more commercial action products like I Am Wrath? How did that come about?
So I Am Wrath was kind of a follow-up after LA I Hate You, because I still had some producers who wanted to work with me after LA I Hate You. The movie, so to answer quickly to your question about the distribution, the movie was distributed pretty much, it was released pretty much everywhere, but from like as a B movie, like with a pretty awful poster. They tried to sell it as a B movie.
I remember you saying this was kind of something that you put a lot of your writing and your time into, and it ended up getting changed into something that's not really what you wanted. Is that right?
That's for I Am Rust. Yeah, I Am Rust. That's what happened with I Am Rust. So I had an idea, and because I was busy working on other movies in post production, because to make a living, I do post production on movies, and so I had a good concept, and I called a good friend of mine who was one of the lead actors in LA I Hate You as well. And I pitched him the project. I gave him the whole structure, and then he loved it, and he wrote a pretty good script out of that. And that script, we wanted to make it originally with Michael Biehn because we knew him, and then it was like someone that we could easily have. And then we pitched it to a few companies, and then they say, oh, Michael Biehn, why don't you go with a bigger name? I mean, because this is a great script, this is going to do great. And because it was a great concept originally, better than what it turned out to be. And so we actually, and I was attached to direct the movie originally. And so that's why I wanted to make it smaller, because as soon as you get bigger names, then that's when let the games begin, and then that's when everybody wants a piece of it, and that's where
Oh, interesting.
that's where when you get, and then they say, why don't you get Nick Cage? And then we had Nick Vallelonga producing the movie, so with me directing, Paul Sloan writing the script based on the story I gave him. And then and so we had a good combo. Nick Vallelonga he won the Oscar for Green Book. Later on he wrote Green Book, he produced Green Book, and he's a good friend. And so that was way before Green Book though. So we had that project I Am Was, and then Nick directed a movie a while ago with Nick Cage. So he said, and some salespeople say, hey, why don't you get Nick Cage to make the movie? And then Nick calls Cage, and then they say, oh yeah. So we met with Cage, and then Cage say, yeah, I want to. And that was when Cage had some money issues at the time, so he was pretty quick to say, oh yeah, I'll do it. And but he loved it. I mean, he said, yeah, the script is awesome. Let's do it. I won't change anything. Won't change a line. And then as as it often happens, that's when we got the financing pretty quickly. Everything was ready to go, and then that's when some distributors, they saw the juicy thing, and then they started to want to get rid of the French director. They wanted a commercial director to do the movie, so they started to put pressure on Nick to change the director. And I didn't want to, but at some point, they say, yeah, but if we don't do that, then there's no movie, blah blah blah. I mean, the whole thing. And so I said, and they say, oh yeah, you're gonna have a producer credit, and you'll be handling editing, etc., etc. And then it became, I mean, I could get into all the details, but it's gonna be it's a little long and painful. It's fun though, but but to make it short, they said, okay, because they wanted, the distributors wanted to bring like a cheap B grade director, and Cage said, no, if I'm gonna make that movie, I want a big name director. So Cage called William Friedkin. Friedkin reads it, say, okay, I'll do it. And then that was great. So then I kind of was happy, I said, okay, I'm not directing, but if it's Friedkin is going to direct it, then I'm fine with it. So then we moved forward with that. The movie was actually announced with Friedkin directing, with Nick Cage, at the Toronto festival, I think. And I think there's been some conflict between, but because Friedkin wanted to rewrite the script, and Cage wanted change stuff, but then they both didn't agree, I think. So my understanding, because at that point I wasn't too much into all the details, I heard, from different sources of the people what was going on. But my understanding is that there was a fallout. They didn't agree on the direction. So Cage said, "Okay, I'm going to direct the movie." And Cage wanted to direct the movie. Hired my buddy Paul to rewrite the script. Paul Sloan, who wrote the original script based on the story I gave him, and that movie, and Cage, I think they rewrote a script which I never read. That was very different from the original. And then I think the distributor said, "Hey, but that's not the movie we want to make. Now it's different." And so everything fell apart, like it happens all the time in Hollywood. And then it
So
took
how did
like
it
a
get to
few.
be John Travolta and not Nicolas
So yeah,
Cage?
later on, Nick hooked up with. He knew, I think, Nick Vallelonga knew through, maybe with Paul as well. They knew Chuck Russell, the director, who was like a big studio director. And Chuck said, "Okay, I want to do that movie." And then it came to be Travolta. I think. Oh yeah, I think I remember that. At that point, we talked to that producer, Michael Mandelson, who ended up being the final producer of the movie. And Michael had wanted to make a movie with Travolta, and he had all the money to make offers, and then he sent. But I remember that there's been a pretty major rewrite in the meantime when Mandelson took over the project, and he said, "Oh yeah," because he just saw John Wick at the time. And then, because the whole story, I don't know. I mean, you've seen probably the movie, the way it was released, and the character is a average guy. His wife gets killed. It
Yeah, and
started off
yeah,
as
he's a former agent of some kind, right?
yeah, but it makes no sense, because in the original story it was more like a death wish, like a normal guy whose his wife is getting killed, and then he has to take matter in his own hands. And meets kind of falling down. That's kind of how I was pitching it at the
Right.
time. So you have the guy who gets into a revenge spree, but then he gets caught into his own craziness, and he can't stop. So that was very different. And then when Mendelssohn got involved, he just saw John Wick, and he thought, what if the guy? I always remember that moment, because what if the guy is an ex-CIA.
I was gonna
So
say, if he was a CIA assassin killer, wouldn't he have dealt with the thugs right away?
yeah, then the stakes, everything falls apart, because to me, it's like, if the guy is an ex-CIA and then he breaks the wall to get the gun, and then how difficult is it gonna be for him to go kill like a junkie?
Yeah,
So
right.
nothing makes much sense in that new version. But I mean, I saw the movie, and I mean, it's kind of fun, There's some fun stuff, and then so I ended up with an executive producer credit. I wasn't. It's funny, because I met with the director at some point to potentially be the editor of the movie, and that was kind of awkward. uh, and that was also a very, very, very weird meeting with Chuck Russell. Very funny. But I mean, nice guy, and they did their thing, and now it's a different movie. And it felt weird, because it's like you come up with like a baby, and then it's like, the baby is not even born, that it's been raised by someone else. That's kind of how it felt, because I
Right.
always feel it was a really strong concept originally, which I won't get into all the details, but it was a really, really good concept. And I may actually use that concept again, because there's nothing of it that remains really in the final version of the movie. So they missed. There was
Yeah,
like a few original elements that
right.
that that kind of disappeared.
What was your experience of meeting? I think you said you had a dinner with Nick Cage. What was that like? What was your sense of him as a person?
He was a very, very sweet man. I really liked him. We had a. It was a bit of a surreal place. We met him in that resort in desert hot spring. So it's a very odd place. I think that's where they shot the movie The Player. It's like this place where people get into like a mud bath.
Yeah, I've been to hot springs and we stayed at a resort similar to that. I don't know if it's the same
Oh, yeah,
one,
maybe
but
that was the
I've
one.
been
Yeah, I
out
don't
there.
remember
Yeah,
the name. So it was odd. It was funny. It was a good meeting. You know, he was nice, very friendly. I think he's a really nice guy. He didn't seem like the crazy guy that you would imagine at first when you see his movies. You know, he's actually, I think he's a very normal guy actually. I mean, normal as it can be when you're in this,
sure.
you know,
Do you
when.
think how would it have turned out if it had been kind of during if it had turned out when it was in the Nick Cage phase?
Well, I mean, the version I had in mind would have been awesome. Really, it would have been Death Wish meets Falling Down. That's a movie I would want to see. That version that was made is like, yeah, I saw it, you know, but it's like I don't really care much about what's going on in the movie. I don't know what was experience watching it.
So do you want to move?
What did you think of the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, and I kind of picked up on that right away. Was some of the story doesn't make sense given the character's background. So it's sort of like, why is he acting this way at the very beginning? But I mean, I get what you're saying about the concept too. And I picked up on Michael Douglas falling down element, maybe a little bit of a Liam Neeson kind of revenge kind of story or something like that, or getting
But
Mel Gibson payback kind of story. So I mean, I like those kind of stories. I thought it wasn't absolutely terrible film, but I can
no,
see,
it's fun. I mean,
yeah,
I kind of enjoy what they did. It's just different, you know. It's just something
it's
that
not what
I
yeah,
would
it's not what you had, yeah.
I would have never written that script, you know. But I think I'm ultimately it's ironic, and it happens a lot in Hollywood. Is that I got the credit like story by, and you know, there's pretty much nothing from that was unique. You know, here
Yeah.
you just have the cliche that everybody have seen, but there was some uniqueness to it that's not there at all. And I thought that's what I was bringing, but that's fine. I mean, you know, that's Hollywood. Movies get made, and that's the most important part is that the movies get made. You know,
Yeah.
because when.
Well, so what about we watched Running with the Devil as well, and that was an interesting film.
Mhm.
Kind of an interesting twist at the end. I won't give it away, but you've got sort of a drug heist, organized crime story here with Nick Cage. You've got Lawrence Fishburne, and they kind of have this, you know, squaring off at the end, and they're on a mountain. And I won't go into all that, but I thought
Yeah.
that was enjoyable. There was some good aspects to this film as well.
Yeah.
And you were co-producer on that, is that right?
Yes. So the way it happened is that's another one of these credits that doesn't necessarily reflect the way things happened. I was originally hired by the same producer as I am Ross, actually, um, which I mean, I say all that. I like Michael. He's a interesting producer, you know, trying to make unique movies in his own way. So I recognize that. And on that movie, I met with the director to originally edit the movie. I was the editor of the movie. I was hired as the editor of the movie, and I was also post supervising on top of that. So that means it was a little technical because the movie was shot in mostly in Colombia actually, and New Mexico and Colombia. And so there was a lot of coordination to organize everything. And because I arrived kind of the whole production was already kind of in place. I mean, they hadn't started shooting yet, but I um, I got yeah, I met with the director. We got along. Great guy, by the way, Jason Cabell. Great director who's who's ex Navy SEAL, And that's also very Hollywood,
I was
like
gonna say, yeah, yeah. I detected probably he had heard or experienced some of these kinds of events or something that probably went
yeah.
into this. Yeah,
And a lot of the story is actually based on real stuff that he
I
witnessed
figured
during all
that.
of his
Yeah,
missions as a Navy SEAL. So it's all based on real stuff. And but he's a force of nature, this director, because he was offered many times as well to not direct the movie, because he wrote the script, but he just had co-directed like a small super small indie movie about veterans. So he didn't really have like strong credits to do a Nick Cage movie, and not only Nick Cage, but you have like Lawrence Fishburne. What's her name? The actress who's in every single TV series right now.
yeah. I know you're talking about her name
Leslie
escapes.
Leslie Bibb,
Leslie. Yeah, yeah.
and you have was it Adam Levy? I think. Is that his first name?
Uh, yeah, yeah.
You have
Yeah.
Peter Facinelli. You have, I mean, he got like an ensemble cast that's kind of amazing, and he was able to go convince every single one of them, and then he was able to stay on board as the director. But as the editor of the movie, I had more pressure in the way that I was more of a filmmaker technically than the director. So my goal was really to 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 gather all this footage and try to create this whole universe out of all these little vignettes put together. So choosing the music carefully, and I also worked on adding some maps to explain what's happening, because there's a lot happening in this movie. But it's a,
Right.
I really, I think it's a great film. And same thing, the script was more complex. I cut. So what happened is that I cut the movie, and then at some point I was hired to work on another movie, and then I had a hiatus on this other movie, so I had time to come technically finish Running with the Devil. But the producer was not happy that I was going to start another movie, so he decided, with the help of another guy who probably didn't like me too so much. They decided to hire another editor who literally stole my credit, because I at that point I cut like a better version of the movie actually. And then when I left, the director, he kind of left the other editor to kind of take over and rechop the movie. And I think what happened, and I think it's a mistake, is that uh, because of the nature of the movie, the way it follows the cocaine from the time it's made until it gets in circulation, and it shows how
Yeah,
the
it shows how
price
it works,
increases.
right?
It's a great film for that, when to really understand how things work. But because of the nature of things, you don't have like one protagonist, and the antagonist. You have like a bunch of
Yeah, it's a
characters.
lot of characters. Yeah, it was. I can imagine that was difficult to edit together.
And because of that nature, the movie is kind of slow paced, because there's a lot going on, but every time you have to re-engage within a mini story that's going to take you to the next story. So it felt kind of slow paced, but there's nothing you can do, you can cut the movie in 45 minutes, and then you're still going to feel kind of slowish, because of the way it's built. And so that, and they thought, because they felt the movie was probably too slow, so they decided to make it shorter. But in the process, I think they kind of lost a bit of the soul of the movie in the way. I think there is a cut that we had before it was rechopped a little bit. I mean, they didn't change much, but they really shortened some moments. And I think that's you're missing a bit more of the point, because you were spending a little more time with that family, with the kids at the beginning. Uh, how the whole,
The farmer.
yeah, the farmer, and how you feel for you need a little more time to feel for all these people, so everything makes sense at the end of why this is happening, because everybody is benefiting from it one way or
Right.
another, and not all for bad reasons, you know.
Right, yeah, exactly. I think that complexity is what made it a little more interesting in terms of the moral, issues. Now you also worked with, Jean-Claude Van Damme, so could you tell us a little bit about that or what that experience was like? I think everybody would love to hear a little bit about Van Damme, whatever you're able to tell.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Jean-Claude is a great guy, and we had fun for a while. So that was a movie called Kill 'Em All. It's almost 10 years ago that it was shot. Um, in and Yeah, it's what can I say? I mean, Jean-Claude is very involved in editing. He loves the editing process of a movie, and then we had a little bit of a conflict at some point because the the studio Sony, they need a movie delivered and they need it quickly. And once Jean-Claude gets involved in the whole editing process, I mean, as an editor, I cut the movie. I don't like to have someone who tells me, "Hey, you need to cut here, you need to do this, to do that." So that's why everything with Jean-Claude was like, "Oh, but I want you to cut here, and then go back a couple of frames, and then that's not the way I can work." So then we hired another editor to work with him on specific scenes for the action stuff mostly. Uh, and
What
so
was your role in that? Was just as editor, or wasn't he staying with you for a little while?
I was editing, post supervising, being very involved in the whole. And one more time, once again it was a first time director as well. So then, when it's a first time director, then you get a little more. Let's say the producers are relying a little more on you to deliver the movie, because the director, it's his first movie as a director, and so that means he's gonna miss some stuff. And then technically, as the editor, you know better what needs to be done. Let's put it like that. And so, I mean, I had fun working on that movie with the director. We got along very well with the director, and he trusted me, and so that makes it faster. And then Jean-Claude did his own cut of the movie, and he wanted his son was in the movie, and he wanted his son to be more in the movie than he was than the part that he had. So then he decided to cut a lot of the other scenes out of the movie, so then his son would be a little more proportionally in the movie. So that's kind of what happened. But then the movie was too short, so that was one of the one of the things we had to deal with. But I mean, it ended up fine, I mean. But the speed was, we had to go quickly to deliver the movie, because Sony, the studios, they have like their slot. They know the movie has to be released at that date, and so you need to deliver. And that was a lot of pressure. So the movie was like a little rushed at the end, I think. But
And then you worked with, Robert De Niro and Morgan Freeman on Comeback Trail, is that right?
yeah, Comeback Trail. So on Morgan Freeman, yeah, I worked with on several. I worked on 4 movies with Morgan Freeman. On the Comeback Trail, I wasn't on set on that one. I wasn't supposed to be involved in that movie originally. I just did the film The Poison Rose with George Gallo, the great guy, great friend. I love George, and that movie was kind of intense. Uh, and then he wanted to do Comeback Trail, and for the post-production side of it was big, because there was a lot of VFX, period movie. It was a big movie, and then the budget they had at the time to do posts, and they wanted me to handle that, and I said I don't think that's gonna work. And after Poison Rose, I kind of needed a break, so I didn't. I kind of passed on it, and they made the movie, and then they went through a lot of budget issues, and at the end of the day, they came for. I think I ended up helping them finalizing the movie, but it was in the middle of COVID. The finalizing of the movie was in 2020, and that's when things became very complicated. And the budget and what happened is that the distributor, because this movie just got officially released just like last year, I think, in the US. It was released on the foreign market.
Yeah, you cut out just for a second. You're back. Go ahead.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it
no
was
problem.
released in foreign markets, you said?
Yeah, it was released in the foreign market, and I helped them at the time finalizing sound mix, all of that and actually I did a pass of editing on that version, and I was kind of proud because I actually, how can I put that nicely? I kind of de-woke the movie.
That was funny.
Yeah, because there was a lot of very woke elements in this movie that I wasn't too crazy about, and I suggested to because woke is not funny. I think it's a comedy, and I think all this woke stuff, I think it kind of kills the comedy. And oddly enough, my understanding is that De Niro was kind of pushing for the same changes as well. And so then I did that little pass, removing, like, I don't know, at some point you have one of the characters that comes out as a lesbian out of nowhere. I was like, what's going on here? And there was some other stuff, like several stuff in the movie like that, and I kind of trimmed, and the movie was a little more concise, and I think it was. I think that version was great, and that's the version that was mostly released, I think. But also, there's a distributor that was taking over the movie for the US, but that was kind of a Christian. That's a funny story actually, but that was kind of a Christian distributor that raised money from Christians, I think, and the movie was starting with a scene with a fake trailer of a movie called like Killer Nuns or something something like that, and it's like a parody of nuns.
Yeah,
Of
right.
nuns decapitating people left and right. And so the movie was starting like that, and the story was that the character of De Niro in the movie was you know suffering from the failure of that movie, and then it's kind
Yeah,
of a
right.
have you seen the movie?
That's the one I've not gotten to yet. It's the next one I want
Yeah,
to watch, but we've seen the
I mean
rest.
it's a remake actually of a small movie from the 80s, and it's a fun movie. I mean, there was a lot of potential, but maybe the movie was made with, that's one of these movies where you have a huge cast that cost a fortune, and then at the end of the day, there's not enough to really make the movie that you're supposed to make. I think the movie suffered maybe a little bit from that. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff in it. It's a film about the
Yeah, I'm looking
industry.
forward to that. Now, most recently, you've done Vampire Project with Kevin Sorbo, and
Yeah.
you invited us to your event, and we got to meet Kevin Sorbo, and that was a lot of fun. And appreciate you putting Esoteric Hollywood in the background of the scene there at the
Yeah.
beginning. And I had a lot of fun with Vampire Project. So this is another one of your own babies that you gave birth to.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about where people can watch that, and then what you have coming next.
So so we were at the stage where COVID started to hit Hollywood. I got lucky because there was a lot of work in post production, helping people finish their movies, and George was able to sign another movie with Morgan Freeman and Ruby Rose that was made like one of the very, very, very few movies that actually got the green light to be shot during COVID, before vaccinations and all of that. That was not a lot of fun, a lot of pressure. And that movie, that was another Morgan Freeman B movie. That I mean, the movie has been destroyed by the reviews. And then after that, my wife and I, my wife works with me. You met Jane, and we put together that festival, and she works with me also, producing all of these movies. And then we decided to leave LA, because LA during the time of COVID was so crazy that it was like unsustainable. So we left and ended up in Mississippi, where we actually worked on another movie with Morgan Freeman here. That's kind of what took us here. It's kind of by coincidence, but we like it. And we sold our house in Los Angeles, had a bit of money, bought something here, beautiful place in nature, like you can see. And we enjoyed here. And then we said, okay, we have this project, because during the early stages of COVID, a lot of people wanted to make small movies, very contained. And then that's what happened. That's how the Vampire Project was born. Like, I had this producer I knew who works also with that same Michael Mendelsohn we were talking about, and they said, oh yeah, if you have an idea for a small movie that could be shot. I was still in LA. We were just in the process of getting to move, but we were still there. And he said, hey, if you have a small movie that could be made for little money, under the radar, because no unions, because of all the COVID rules, etc., maybe Michael can finance that, like pay, I don't know, $100,000-$200,000 or whatever, to make a small movie. And then I just had written like another movie called Creepy Camper. That's an actual movie that I wrote. And then Michael says, no, I'm not too much interested in that one. But come, let's talk. I have some ideas, maybe to make a vampire movie. And then he takes us to visit some properties of his that he just purchased in the Hollywood area, like abandoned properties. And he takes us, my wife and I. He says, yeah, bring Jane. He knew Jane, of course. And he says, yeah, bring Jane, then let's go see these houses, because they could be a great place to shoot small horror movies. And so we go visit the places. It was kind of a bit of a surreal moment, And then after that, we visit these couple houses. He said, yeah, if you have an idea, like maybe a vampire movie. And then I start to think of a project to write based on these houses, and trying to come up with an idea. And I had that idea that it would be funny to shoot the story of a writer who's meeting with a producer who wants to make a movie.
Yeah, so it gets super meta. Yeah.
So yeah, and then that's why I wrote the script of Vampire Project, which is exactly that. So basically, a big chunk of what's happening in the Vampire Project is actually based on my experience working with Michael and another guy who works with him, and how and I had that idea come out of nowhere, and then I started to write that, and I wrote the entire script like in just a few days, actually, like in 5 days. I wrote the first draft, and it didn't change that much, actually. And then I submitted it to them, and that was odd, because that was kind of what we just went through. But then it was really a movie about the conflict between a producer who wants to make a movie and the writer who wants to make another movie. And I actually kept on nourishing the script with the continuation of the relationship with the producer.
You have a
And
go,
they
go ahead.
passed on it. They didn't get it at all. I mean, it's like to me, there's a David Lynch element to it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I loved watching it. It was funny, and it was some symbolism, spiritual warfare going on. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and there was also it was also an opportunity to talk about the COVID and how it was affecting creative creation, and how the woke mind as well. Like they always want to, producers. I kind of mixed other experience with other producers, who say, hey, yeah, you need to put like a transgender in the movie. You need to do this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then the whole
It
allegory
pokes
of the
fun at a lot of
vampire.
that.
The allegory of the vampire started to make complete sense. Like what is the vampire in Hollywood? The Hollywood vampires.
Exactly, Hollywood vampires. Now, the next project, and I'll have a link below, by the way, where people can watch that online if they want to click
Yeah,
over
yeah.
and check it out. But you have a new project coming that I have printed out. I can't say what it is. What can you say about that? Anything?
Yeah, I mean that's a project I really love. It's really like one of these movies also that's kind of a very original, and yet is very much based on all the genre movies we like. And it's very rural. It all takes place in a small place like where we are, in a church. Because in the meantime, leaving LA, which was like leaving the demons of LA, was taking us closer to God. And then I really felt like, and also this script is also like an offshoot of another script that was bigger, that was supposed to be made, and that almost got made like 10 times. And every time there was something, so I wrote like a different version and a different version of a different version, and that ended up being that new script that's called All Sinners. That's part of a two movies now. All Sinners Go to Hell, and it's a conceptual movie, the diptych I could call it, because you have there's two pieces of the same movie, because it used to be one movie and that had to split into two movies. But I think the new version is great, especially the first. The first one takes place in it's kind of a hostage situation in a church. It's kind of a fun. I would say there's some Coen brothers, a little bit like Fargo-esque,
Yeah,
small
I got
town,
that vibe for sure. Yeah.
but with also like a little more action-driven, with some Guy Ritchie elements, which is also always fun. So it's definitely a fun movie that's very mainstream, and yet there's always, it's always complicated to and it's the beauty of it is that it's a pretty simple movie to make. So that's why now we're aiming at making it like small, and the more I think about it, the more I'm trying to stay away from the whole Hollywood system, which I mean I know that system very well, especially the independent side of it, where how the financing works, and this, I think this is getting more and more difficult, using the like in the B action genre, getting the names. All these names are getting too old now to be in action movies, like you're talking about Van Damme, Dolph Lundgren. I mean, I worked with Lundgren, with Steven Seagal, with on movies with these guys, but now it's getting, they're all too old, like the Expendables now. They're
Yeah.
and
Right.
there's no one else now that has a name that's big enough. So we have another movie, another project with Scott Adkins, for example, that's more on the mainstream side of it. But to me, the passion is really to make relevant movies that are meaningful, that talk to people, that makes them want to see it several times, that makes them cherish the movies, like, and it's becoming rare because most of the movies that have the budget to try to make something well crafted nowadays, they're all very super woke, and then you see through that, and then you start watching a movie, it's like, okay, it's another one of those, and it's a little depressing. So that's why we decided to create that banner, Films Against the Machines. And the experience of the Vampire Project was to actually, we said, okay, we're gonna do everything on this movie, from writing to finishing to distribution, because I think the model of distribution for independent movies is becoming really rotten, because you either do like a pretty much like a shitty B movie with an old guy who doesn't want to be there anymore, and an audience that, that's getting tired of that too. So you need to make these movies, overpay actors, and so there's no money to make the movie, and you end up making like a remake of a reboot of Die Hard with
Yeah.
$1 million. So it's gonna be either that independent movies or the art house stuff like A24 and all of that. But that's for the happy few who are willing to push the propaganda and all of that. And in between, there's almost no room to make your own movies. So that's why we decided to create our own platform and say, okay, Vampire Project, we have the whole film is there now, and then we're bringing another catalog, because we're not the only ones in that situation. So we're bringing other people, like we're partnering with this French guy who's very funny, who made like several feature films that are also like very anti-woke and very relevant movies. And so we're gonna put these movies there. We're gonna put movies that are more health conscious as well, some with religious content. Like we have a beautiful movie coming out soon called Eternity. It's a beautiful movie made by Christian, but not only for Christians, because that's also another thing about Christian movies that are generally just made for Christians, which is kind of pointless in some way. So this is a beautiful movie. So we're really trying to do to bring something different on All Sinners. It's also like a great entertaining movie with great Christian values in it. And
Yeah, excellent. I'm looking forward to it. There might be a small role for
yeah,
myself, and
of
you
course,
might
yeah.
see
No,
me in
and
there.
then when we met, and that's funny how it all came together, because in the Vampire Project, if you look carefully on the nightstand of the protagonists, because we were
Yeah.
thinking of what would he read, what would be, and then of course it starts with the Bible, and then you build on that with lots of different people, and my brilliant wife, she suggested actually to put your book in there, and I read it. I said, of course, it makes total sense that it should be there, and so that's why Esoteric Hollywood is on. Esoteric Hollywood is a must read. I think everybody should read, and we got tons
Well,
of
thank you.
tons of copies, as you know, that we that was everybody's of our friends' Christmas was was one of the
I appreciate
copies,
that. Well, I'm looking forward to also being
and then
Deputy Luker. So
now knowing that you're also an actor and trained and everything, I'm really looking forward to working with you for sure.
that's going to be.
Because that's how most of the movies I made. It's always like that. You meet people, and then you say, okay, that's cool. Let's make a movie together. That's it's not just a one guy making a movie. It's an ensemble. It's meeting people,
Yeah, it's
and you never know
providential.
what the movie is gonna be. It's when the movie's finished that you know what it is.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Yvonne. Great discussion of the arts, especially the art of filmmaking. This is probably the most unique medium or form of art out there. So really appreciate all of your insights and your story. Glad that you are out there doing what you're doing, kind of being against the woke side of all this. So I'll have all the links below, and anything else that you want to plug or remind us of, or call our attention to, maybe something that we didn't mention in your catalog.
No, I mean, if I mean, it's also a call. I think I'm taking another just another second. I'm sorry, I talk a lot. I know,
Oh, sure,
but
go
I
ahead.
love, first I love what I do, and but there are a lot of people out there who want to make movies and who have some things some things to tell, and my wife and I, we have like really an expertise on the entire business in the US mostly, but also we know Europe, of course, but mostly the US independent. We know, we really understand how it works, and we can maybe help people because it's time to give back as well, and it's good to help people who would want to make movies who are kind of like-minded. And these people, they must be really, really lost right now because the industry is changing like crazy. And if we could become that anchor in that system that people can rely on and say, hey, maybe we can start something, because we understand, we've been through everything, in I mean everything, not everything, of course, because there's so much, but there's if we can help people who are really, really interested, and we can really help, and potentially work with people who have ideas or who have made movies that are made but they don't know what to do with it, because and then maybe that platform can help with that. That's why we put together that festival, to also bring people from other countries that would have the same limitations, because the general the entire industry is ultra left, and and uh, and and we need to
Yeah,
bring.
well, we need people that are making art that's not ultra left. That's the key point.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's super important that people can express themselves. And now, in the way it is, there's no way. There are things you cannot tell, and that's what we try to do with the Vampire Project. It's a movie about that. Actually, it's a movie about how can you manage to tell your stories, in that context. So,
Awesome.
but
Yeah.
but
So
the
people can reach out to you also if they're interested and who want to make films and so forth that aren't
yeah, yeah, through the site.
establishment.
Yeah, through filmsagainstthemachines.com, they can send email
Yeah.
or
All that I'll have all that linked below
private. Great,
the
awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much. That was
Absolutely, Yvonne. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and inviting us to your film festival. We had a lot of fun down there.
and we'll have the festival again, where we are working on securing dates and the movie theater for 2026. So you'll have to come again.
Absolutely, I'd be honored to. And I forgot I gave a talk there too. I didn't even remember that, but
That was an awesome
yeah,
talk. Yeah,
you invited me to give a talk. We had a good time there, and talking to Kevin Sorbo too. So, thank you guys. If you're in the chat, be sure and leave some comments below. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and check out Yvonne's film, especially Vampire Project. And I will see you next time.